Hello there, thank you so much for stopping by. My name is ChitChad, and on today's episode, we're animating Waluigi! On today's episode, we are continuing the 3-part mini-series where I am building animations that are being used for a theme park gaming project over on my gaming channel. If you want to know more about that, feel free to check out the first video on this series. I will leave a link to it down in the description below. But for today's episode, we are building a character animation for Waluigi, and I'm really excited because we're going to start the process in Photoshop where we'll do the sketching, and then we'll take that sketch over into Adobe Animate where we'll do the line work, the coloring, and the animating. Then we'll take that animation over into Adobe After Effects where we'll combine the background, the elements, and of course the animation to build the final piece. So a lot of stuff going on in today's episode. It's going to be a lot of fun. So with all that being said, let's get it started. Of course, we got to start things off with the sketch, and Waluigi was very fun to draw. I feel like his height difference between him and Wario is greater than Mario and Luigi. I think the difference in their scale and their height is drastically different, and I thought this was kind of fun. But it did present a bit of a challenge just because Wario and Waluigi take up the same amount of space in the composition. So I needed to push Waluigi back farther in the background just so that when he pops up next to Wario in the final piece, the scale difference doesn't look as odd just because he's farther back than Wario, and Wario's up close and personal, which I kind of feel like is more suited to their personalities anyways. Wario tends to be the gruff, in-your-face kind of guy, and Waluigi just kind of hangs back, and he'll be the one to sucker punch you. It's been really fun doing this project and continuing to work on animations that are being utilized not only for this channel, but also for a fun, gaming project on the Planet Coaster side of things on my gaming channel. So this has been a fun one. Of course, Luigi and the Boos and the characters from Luigi's Mansion are going to be kind of next on my list as far as the Mario projects are concerned. But as far as the rest of the content here on the channel, I'm working on some other animations and some other voicing things. So it's been a lot of fun, and we're actually wrapping up the sketching part of this, and we're going to jump into the Linework stage, which is a lot of fun. I've been doing a lot more work in Illustrator recently with my freelance and my day-to-day job, but I still enjoy doing the line work directly inside of Flash/Animate, just because to me it's easier to keep as much of the work in the same program as much as possible. So if I need to redraw anything or change something, I don't have to do that, in Illustrator and then bring it back into Flash. Or say, for example, I had a couple questions, why don't I just do all my animations inside of After Effects? And it's a very similar reason. If I need to do any additional character changes, I can do that just right then and there on the animation itself, because if you put everything inside of graphics or movie clips, that means it's a preserved piece of artwork and you can change it as needed. You just have to go inside of the clip, and if you have everything set up correctly, you should be able to just modify it and jump back out, and then it's the modified versions. You might have to change the keyframes and the positioning around a little bit depending on how greatly you change the object, but it's still really nice just to be able to keep everything in the same program as much as possible. And I've done a lot of animations inside of After Effects. In fact, that's what I use for not only freelance but for my work as well. It's all entirely, if there's animation involved, it's almost entirely inside of After Effects. But as far as character animation is concerned, I think between Flash/Animate and Toon Boom, when I used to have access to Toon Boom, were really rewarding and fun to work in, and Flash especially, just because I've been working in this program for, oh my goodness, many years at this point. My very first cartoons were made inside of Flash, and it's just been fun to watch the program grow. I've been working with it even before it was bought out by Adobe, and it was just its own entity. And being a part of the kind of the Newgrounds era, and never uploading any of my cartoons outside of DeviantArt at the time, just because I was afraid of people on Newgrounds. I figured, oh man, my animations are so you know, silly and just little fun projects that I was just like, oh no, I'm not posting that there. So back in the day, yeah, I used to post them to DeviantArt, and they were fun. They were fun little projects, just learning animation. Because when I went to school, when I went to high school, there was a media department, and the media department was focused more on broadcast and film. And there was only one other student besides me that was really interested in animation. They did everything inside of After Effects, utilizing the puppet tool and just keyframe swapping inside of After Effects, which you could just import, you know, like a PNG or a JPEG sequence and do it that way. But I was really into Flash and jumping between or utilizing both the keyframing tween aspect of animation, but also doing the keyframing stuff. Right now, I'm working on my own animated series called Benny and Francis, Benny and Fran for short, and they are kind of a mix. I use a lot of what's called the swap technique, where you create basically all the necessary assets inside of a movie clip or a graphic, and then from the main timeline you can set a keyframe and then tell that keyframe to associate that graphic with a specific keyframe inside of it. So as we're jumping in the coloring stage, I'll explain hopefully a little bit better. So everything as far as embedded animations work as in timelines inside of timelines. So you can basically have a walk cycle that's embedded in its own timeline, and then on the exterior main timeline have a keyframe that basically moves the whole character. So that way you can have complicated animations built on top of each other. And the swap techniques, basically you can either tell it to swap entire graphics or entire movie clips, or you can do another thing, which you select the graphic, add a keyframe, and then when you select that keyframe, you can tell that embedded timeline on that graphic to jump to a specific number, essentially swapping out that graphic for whatever is inside of it on that specific keyframe. So for example, on Benny and Francis, they have 3 sets of mouths. They have neutral, smiling, and sad, and I'll be adding more, you know, as time goes on, but that way I'm able to basically get a whole lip sync without having to redraw them each time, because I basically have drawn them once in those different styles, and then I can just tell the keyframe to go to that specific instance of, you know, their mouth animation. And I'm doing that a lot. So for Francis, he has these antennas, and I use that technique to basically tell his antennas, you know, bend forwards, bend backwards, depending on his mood. They almost act as eyebrows. Because Francis doesn't have eyebrows per se, like super normal expressive eyebrows, kind of like Benny does. So I use those antennae to kind of act as a replacement for that. So there's a lot of aspects of those characters, including, you know, hand positions and arm positions. So it's a combination between doing the tween animation, which I'm focused on very heavily in this video. And there are good ways to use it, and there's, you know, less good way. There's, in my mind, there's no bad way to do really anything in the animation. There's just more effective ways, and tweening can be often overused. So I try to do keyframes as much as possible to get that squash and stretch, to get that exaggerated look, and not rely too heavily on tweens. When it's a project like this, where, you know, I give myself an afternoon to basically make the entire thing, you know, you gotta cut time where you can, because I can't have myself working on this for days, you know, straight. I've got other projects that I need to work on. So when it comes to being time effective or even cost effective, you know, tween can really help you out, as long as you utilize keyframes to your advantage, really get those, blocking out those poses to be exactly what you want. And also the fact that when I made these characters, I was like, okay, I'm not going to create any additional assets for these guys. I'm thinking, you know, it's a theme park. These are going to be used for screens, and not a real theme park, obviously, the Mario theme park that I'm making in Planet Coaster on my gaming channel. But I'm thinking, like, oftentimes you see, even at Disney, you'll see some animations that you could tell were more cost effective, just because there wasn't like an actual animation team behind it. It was probably a motion graphics person or a motion graphics animator, and they're going to utilize the assets that they have. Now, in that regard, I wasn't going to make any new like foot positions. I wasn't going to make any new hands or new faces or anything like that. I literally just want to draw the character and see how much I could get away with just utilizing the one set of objects that I had. Now, that isn't to say that like what I'm doing right now, there are portions where this model isn't adequate for the animation that I'm trying to create. You know, it's not going to be able to get these elaborate poses because it's essentially pieces broken up to be able to bend and manipulate to appear as if his ligaments and his different parts of his body are moving, but there's going to be those awkward in-betweens where the knees don't exactly line up or the elbows don't exactly line up. So that's when I'll create an adjustment layer, or not really an adjustment layer, but just a layer where I make adjustments. Adjustment layer is an actual thing inside of Photoshop. But I just call it my adjustments layer just because that's the layer that I'll go in and keyframe and redraw things that need to be redrawn in case of, you know, things looking like they're breaking. And as far as Waluigi's animation itself, you're going to notice that I've changed it up a lot, and it's kind of a bummer. It's a little bit of a drawback to his scale just being a little bit of a problem with the composition that I have in place. You'll notice that I have like this hole in the wall. That hole in the wall represents where the screen's actually going to be in the Gaming Planet Coaster project. That wall is literally the texture that is on the exterior of the Wario arcade that I'm building inside of there. So I know that the screen is going to fit behind this hole in this wall, so I have to make sure that the animation is as contained in that section as much as possible. And the problem with Waluigi is that I didn't want to scale him back to the point where he's super small on screen, because then he just won't look right compared to Wario. But I also wanted to get as much of his expressive body movement in the shot as possible as well. So it was a bit of a balance, and I think that if I were to go back and plan this a little bit differently, I would have kind of animated Wario and Waluigi side by side instead of separate, so that I could see just how much space they're taking up in relation to one another. And then that way, if something like this were to have occurred, I could have catched it more early on. But I'm still really happy with how this turned out, you know, giving myself an afternoon to kind of make these things and just have fun with it. You know, at the end of the day, animation is one of the most rewarding and fun things for me to do, even though it can be incredibly time consuming. When you kind of get right down to it, hours will just fly by without me even noticing. And it's kind of scary sometimes, you know. I'll think like, oh, it's 12 in the afternoon, but oh wait, no, it's 12 in the morning. What just happened? Where'd all the time go? One of those scenarios. But when you really like get into the groove, no matter what it is, you know, you could be writing music, you could be writing a story, you could be drawing, you could be animating. When you're really in the groove, like the whole everything else just kind of like fades away, and you just start making stuff. And I think when that happens, and you know, you allow yourself that time, you know, that there's no external forces or there's no other obligations that you need to be attached to in that day, to allow yourself to kind of just get ingrained or engrossed into the work is really fun. Just because when you finally are finished, you know, like for me at the end of this afternoon of animating, you just kind of step back and you're like, you know, for a couple of hours where it just felt like no time passed at all, that was not only a lot of fun, but I made something, you know? And for me, working as a motion graphics person, working as an editor, you know, this wasn't an obligation. I didn't have to make this thing. So when I'm working inside of Flash or After Effects or Photoshop, and it's just for me and it's just for fun, and you feel like you just made something just for the sake of fun, you're just like, I like that, yeah. And even though, like, as we're jumping into After Effects to do the final compositing stage, you know, there's still things that I'm like, you know, I might do that differently next time, I might do that differently next time. But that's the thing, there's always a next time, you know. For me, and I think this is a really strong point that I've had to reiterate in my own life, because I've stopped myself from working on things so many times just because I didn't think I was of the skill set or at the level that I should be in order to start working on something like this. That stopped me so many times from just making something. And now that I'm trying harder to push that out of the way, if there's one thing I could kind of pass on, it's just like, don't be afraid to work on stuff, even if you feel like you're not going to be able to make it exactly to your vision the time that you're making it, because there will be a next time, and you can take what you learned that time and apply it to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And that's growth, you know. It's okay to not be good at something or great at something or just even decent at something. It's the progress It's the process of going through, you're sharpening your skill set, you're becoming better than you were the previous time that you did that thing. And I think that's awesome. You know, there's things on my channel to this day I look back on, I'm like, ooh, gosh, should I have uploaded that? That is not my strongest piece, you know, but that's the thing. The next piece that I make will hopefully be stronger because I went through that process, you know? So I love growing as an artist, as an animator, and doing little side fun projects like these is just super rewarding. And I hope you all have enjoyed watching this video. Hopefully some of the things that you've seen maybe have inspired you to come up with your own ideas, your own animations. And if you have any questions at all of anything that you've seen in today's video, let me know in the comments down below, whether it's about animation, keyframes, After Effects, Photoshop. I will be happy to answer them to the best of my ability. But with all that being said, we're actually to the end of this video. So let's go ahead and jump to the final render of this Waluigi animation. And that is the final piece for the Waluigi animation. I'm really happy with how it turned out. It's a simple, fun, and quirky character animation, and it's going to be a lot of fun seeing it in the theme park project that I'm working on over on my gaming channel. I will leave links down in the description below for you to check that out. And of course, this is not the final episode because we still have the 3D animated Mario coin, and that will be on the next episode of this series, so stay tuned for that. But of course, thank you all so much for watching. I genuinely appreciate it, and as always, I will chat with you on the next episode.